What is happening, guys? Cowboy here, and today I wanted to bring y'all my overall impressions of No Rest for the Wicked. After having played roughly 15 hours of early access, I'm at the point where I feel I've done pretty much everything early access has to offer. I got my house all set up and some basic decorations out. I've killed the early access bosses. I've reached the end of the early access campaign. I had a chance to dive into the early portion of the endgame dungeon that we're able to do to just farm more loot. And I've had a lot of fun with it so far, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. Being that it's an early access title, I certainly think there's nothing wrong with that, but I kind of wanted to do a video to just put some things out there, share my thoughts on areas where I think the game could really use some touch-ups. And yeah, so probably one of the biggest things that stood out to me while playing this is pretty much all the economic systems in the game. The loot economy, the money economy, the gathering economy. There are a lot of issues with the pacing of the game, I feel. And to start, let's talk about the loot economy. So one of the biggest things when it comes to loot in this game is you're really going to be crafting a lot of stuff that's good. You know, most stuff that drops is just going to be white like this. Unless you take it to the enchanter and get a bunch of effects on it, it's going to be very basic. So I've done that with all of my gear. I have a lot of healing effect increase type stuff and armor increase on all of my gear. Same with the weapon. This was a weapon that I enchanted, so you end up with you can get cursed, which will give you one negative effect. So in this case, I lose some experience on death, but I have a chance to gain health on damage dealt, which also seemingly scales with the healing effect increases. So that makes you nearly immortal, which is definitely busted, but actually feels almost necessary to get through some of the endgame content. And it's definitely a weird design choice, I feel. You know, when it comes to action RPGs, I think you want to push players towards getting new loot. And instead, we have this system where a lot of the loot we're finding is very basic. It's just, you know, white pieces of gear. And then it gets good by us spending money to then enchant it to give it effects that can make it more viable. And it's a very strange model, in my opinion, because, you know, you're getting basic gear and then just basically playing the lottery with it to see if it becomes good, as opposed to finding gear that becomes good. Now, that's not to say you can't find gear that becomes good. I've found, you know, I've gotten 2 different boss weapons. Occasionally, I get something that's decent. Like this came from a boss, so you know, decent stuff on there: armor, poise, defense, stamina, regen. But for the most part, overwhelmingly, a lot of your better items come from you working with enchanting, which we'll talk about that later. Another thing that I think is really off here is the stat economy. So for example, this is a tier 2 sword, requires 22 on strength. And right now I'm at 17, I have 25 strength. I filled up my health and my stamina to a decent amount. So 25, 21, a little bit in focus, a point in equip load, and I've completely ignored my secondary stats here in terms of dex and faith. And a lot of the stuff I'm finding is already at what I would consider the next tier. So tier 3, we're looking at 42 strength to use that. We are looking at 42 strength to use that, 42 strength to use that. And I mean, that stuff, that's 6 levels away. That's assuming I took my next 6 levels and I poured every single point into just strength. And it's a little bit weird, I think, from a loot perspective, you know, especially because we're giving a Souls Light type system where players are going to be concerned about equip load and health and stamina and all those other factors. Seeing the next tier of weapons has such a insane stat requirement is a bit of a shock, you know, because, you know, that's 6 levels away, and levels aren't exactly fast in this game from my experience. I mean, I know I have experience loss on death on my sword, but to be fair, I'm not really dying. But yeah, six levels is a pretty heavy ask of just focusing purely on strength. Just to be able to use the weapon, you know, not even just like, oh, hey, this weapon gets good at 42 strength, but just to equip it, you need that much. And part of this, I think, is as you're progressing the story, the game begins to like gate the gear. So, you know, we have the tier 1 gear, and then we're going to start getting tier 2 gear, which has, you know, more significant requirements, 22, 16, 16. And then as the tier 3 gear starts dropping, it gets even more so. So, you know, 26, 26, 26, 26, 26, 26. This stuff is just as plate, so it doesn't have stat requirements. But, you know, 42 strength, 26, 26. These are very, very heavy stat requirements. And what's weird is the point I'm at in the game, a lot of the gear that is now dropping for me is level 3 gear. even though I'm only level 17. Now, if I was already like level 25 or something and this stuff was dropping, great, I'd be able to use it. But all I really did was like beat the campaign, and suddenly the majority of gear that I'm finding is outside of my level. It becomes unusable, which is a very, very odd design choice. It doesn't seem like it's tied to your progression as a player. And as I mentioned, where, you know, it's not, the use case for this stuff is very weird. You know, take a strength weapon. This is a tier 1 strength weapon. It's going to require 10 strength. A tier 2 strength weapon is going to require, well, the one I have is like 22, but this one's 28. And then going up to a tier 3, we go up to 42. These are some pretty significant, I guess, increments in terms of just being able to use the gear, which definitely feels odd considering that's what's primarily dropping. On top of that, kind of as I mentioned with enchanting, this is the only real way you're going to get solid gear, is you're going to go there and you're going to pay her to enchant it. And then it's a roll of the dice. I mean, some of my helmet here, I purchased like 4 or 5 of these from the blacksmith, and I just kept enchanting them until I got one that I liked. So indestructible focus regen was a pretty nice roll. But it's definitely weird, you know, like thinking about Diablo 3, for example. This reminds me of like Endgame Diablo 3, where you're using your Angel's Breath and everything else to like repeatedly reroll items to try and get perfect rolls, but we're doing it at like the 15-hour mark, which, you know, feels off. So in terms of loot economy, I definitely think there should be a bigger emphasis on loot that is dropping, that is usable, that's not just, you know, plain white stuff. Throw some more purples in there, throw some more blues in there. You know, you don't want players to have to scrounge for all their loot. And the other problem too is because of the way the system currently is, we end up spending the majority of our actual currency in game just affording these upgrades. So right now I have 1 silver and 24 bronze left. And the thing is, most of the time when you're actually fighting enemies, you're not really getting money. Like you'll occasionally find money from enemies, you'll occasionally get money from a chest. So, if I were to kill this guy, like what I say, I was at 1 in 24. You can see we killed that dude. Where am I at? 1 in 24. Which is a very, very strange choice, in my opinion. Like the majority of money I make in the game is from selling gear that I have found that I don't have any plans to use. You know, this is worth almost a silver. That's worth 76. That's worth 72. But I feel like at a bare minimum, enemies should drop some currency. Even if it's only, you know, 10 bronze per kill, you know, there should be consistent currency drops on every single thing you kill in this game. That's like a staple of all action RPGs. I feel like it's really weird to have the loot economy locked behind us spending currency to upgrade our stuff, but then also having the currency not be readily farmable, with the primary method of acquisition being doing daily quests or selling gear that you're not going to use. Definitely a very odd choice. And also the resource economy is a little bit whacked out. You know, taking a look at that tree, I killed it in one hit, and I got 1 pine wood from it. Now, to be clear, I'm using, this is a silver axe. This is a tier 3 axe. And that's a pine tree. That's a tier 1 resource. And I'm still getting 1. Which is absolutely wild to me, because crafting your bed costs 10. So, I mean, and I don't expect, you know, every tree I cut down to give me like a shit ton, but it feels really weird that there's also no progression there. Occasionally you'll get 2, but yeah, there we go, I got 2 that time, but most of the time you're gonna get 1. And that also feels like a really big missed opportunity, you know, because in terms of the axes, you start with the copper axe, and then you get the iron woodcutter's axe, and then I was lucky enough to find a silver woodcutter's axe. But the only seeming benefit I can find from having higher tier equipment is just you get through the resource faster, and it has a bit more durability. So that has 150 durability on it, whereas this one has 125. I believe the tier 1 has 100. But just because of the resource economy in the game and how it works, it's really odd to me that a higher tier tool doesn't produce more resource. And to elaborate on this, we're going to go over to the dude and talk about the town improvement. And I'm sure the intent here is that you slowly accomplish this over time, but you know, there's not much else to do in early access. So, you know, that needs 10 pine wood, which we'll confirm that and give him that pine wood. But you know, That's going to need 10. That's going to need 10. This is going to be 10 spruce, 10 spruce, 10 pine, 10 spruce. That's a lot of fucking wood, considering I'm getting 1 and sometimes 2 on a hit. Now, if this is intent to be like, hey, my buddies are going to all come in and they're going to contribute, then it's fine. But right now, at least, most people are playing this game solo. In fact, I don't even think the multiplayer servers are working yet. And so the loot economy, the resource economy of those core resources feels incredibly restrictive. And honestly, the most simple solution, I think, is to just outright increase the amount you get with the tools. And what I mean by this is, you know, a copper axe, you're going to get a guarantee of 1 wood with a chance for 2 wood. An iron woodcutter's axe, you're going to get a much higher chance of 2 wood with a low chance at 1 wood. With the silver woodcutter's axe, you get a guaranteed 2 wood and a chance to get 3 wood or something like that. You know, if you have a higher tier tool, a sharper axe that is a better tool overall, it doesn't make sense that I'm getting the same resource from that tree if I was cutting it down with a crappy copper axe that's constantly chipping. You know, just it doesn't. So that's definitely something that I think needs addressing. And it only gets worse because once you decide to start doing your house, you know, go over here. Let's say I wanted to make a bed. That's 10 pine planks. That's 5 spruce planks, 5 copper, and 10 iron ingots. So these are roughly 1 to 1. So that means I'm cutting down 10 regular trees, 5 spruce trees. I'm finding 5 copper ore nodes and then 5 iron ore nodes, all to make a single bed. All of that for 1 bed. That is wild to me. That is absurd, especially when you consider what I already mentioned with the resource economy and how kind of stingy the game is with resources. In terms of healing, I've seen some complaints about the healing system, how you need to craft your own heals. That's actually one thing I haven't had an issue with. I feel just running around, it's very, very easy to get the things you need to cook up a bunch of heals. You know, right now we can make up 2 more of these. On any average time, I have 9 to 15 heals on deck, and I don't even really worry about them anymore because I have the damage on hit with the weapon. So I don't really have any problems with that. But the resource economy, the money economy, and the overall quality and frequency of the loot that is dropping certainly feels off. Moving on from there, some other things that I found a little bit odd. So parries, for the most part, are going to open an enemy up so that you can get a follow-up attack or a stronger attack. I know one of the patch notes made it so that when you parry a specific boss, it doesn't even stagger him anymore, which is a really odd design choice in my opinion. I feel like if you're hitting a parry, you should be rewarded for that parry. And the game doesn't give ripostes or anything of that. You know, we can walk up and get backstabs. But if you were to parry an enemy, just to use this guy as an example here, it's assuming I don't get lit on fire. You see, it's going to stun him for a second. And I can get a follow-up attack with that. Like, the best thing to do is to parry and then get off like a charged attack. But especially with the change where parry is now going to cost stamina unless you're using a shield, I feel like there should be something, you know. You guarantee a critical follow-up, if you will. Guarantee a riposte, you know, similar to the backstab animation. Like, I know I've been talking about loot economy, and we finally had something drop here. But, oh, look at that. It's a new sword. 42 strength. Why, bro? Why? I'm still level 17. Why is this the quality of loot that is dropping for me? And I'm going to be honest, it feels bad. It feels very bad when I'm only 17. I don't feel like I've out-leveled content for the game, you know. I beat the bosses. It was a decent challenge. But all the loot that is now being provided to me is at a stat threshold far beyond what I can do right now. There's no, you know, 1.5 strength bonus from the two-handing or anything like that. It's just like, hey, here's this loot. By the way, you don't get to use that, which is very, very odd. You know, I feel the loot should certainly be more gradual. The 2 to 3s, you know, it shouldn't go, there shouldn't be a jump from 22 strength up to 42 strength. That's immense. That is a huge gap, and there's, you know, like I said, this also comes with the assumption that, hey, the only stat you're leveling is strength to be able to use these weapons. Right now, the game also doesn't have respec. As far as I know, I believe that's just part of early access, but respec is definitely something they're going to need to add in. As it stands right now, you know, you're just going to have a lot of loot that you can't really do anything with. Big boy. Get off me with these bombs, bro. Does look like they pulled back the health gain a little bit on the strength on hit, which is probably good. Oh, die. So you can see dying, even with the XP loss on death, it's only a little bit, so not a huge negative from that. Some other things that are a little bit odd in terms of the standout is the boss fights in particular. I know I'm not going to be showing any boss fights here, but this kind of goes back to the opening that you would, you know, seemingly create by executing a parry. Right now, it doesn't feel like you really get much of a reward for doing that against a boss. Even though when I was fighting a boss, parries were really the only consistent way that I was able to get damage. But a lot of the time I end up spending basically just waiting my turn and charging attacks. And at least with strength builds, it's definitely a rather dull playstyle. You know, there we go. We finally got some loot from that guy, and it was like 13. But like, why? Why don't more people drop this damn loot? But it definitely feels that I don't know. I guess it's kind of the, you know, there's a certain dance I think that you have in Souls-likes where, you know, you're evading the boss and you're looking for opportunities, and especially playing with a heavier build, you're not going to really do that. As I mentioned, we have this shoulder check, which is going to knock them down. Then I'm going to be able to get in a little bit of damage, but that knockdown isn't going to be 100% on bosses. It'll knock down, or it'll you know, stagger a couple of them. But you know, right there, for example, I got my knockdown. Tried to go for a charged attack. That's not going to work. It's like, well, if I don't have the mobility to dodge through the target and attack because I'm already heavy, you know, I want to be able to utilize that knockdown that I have. Now, I can't speak to how more lightweight classes work. Maybe they are able to you know, easily dodge an attack. But, you know, even if I was to take my armor off, if I was to get to a medium armor, well, now we're down on a fast roll. So, you know, let's try it. Let's find something. We'll try fighting the fast roll. But honestly, fast rolls feel a little bit weird with this weapon. This happens to be a very fast greatsword because it is that double attack built in, but most of the greatswords I've seen swing significantly slower, so much so that honestly I'm not sure if you could successfully run them with a lightweight build like this. There's no stuff like that. We're gonna kill that guy. No loot, no money. We're just getting a little bit of experience. I don't know, man. There's definitely some very mixed feelings around stuff like that. I do like what they're cooking here. I feel like they have. I think the bones they got going on here are good. I think there's a lot of potential for a really solid product here. But right now, it feels like there's just a lot of sections of this game that are definitely being held back at the moment. And you know, like I said, right now, once you get through the campaign, there's not really all that much to do. And I'll run on over. I'll show you all the quote endgame dungeon that we can do right now. It's basically just going through layers and fighting enemies. But this will give me a good chance to see how viable we are just being naked, so that we have fast rolls.
The church welcomes all.
But yeah, definitely need resource economy absolutely needs to be adjusted. Loot economy definitely needs to be adjusted.
The stonemasonry is closed.
The just amount of money you get, the currency in general, definitely needs to be adjusted. There's a lot of stuff going on. fixes in particular, I think, need definitely a pass, taking a look at the fixes, because I don't think, you know, not all of his fixes are created equally as it stands now. Like, health on hit is such an insane boon that without it, I feel like you're automatically at a disadvantage, just because if you don't have that health on hit, well, you know, good luck, you're probably going to get bodied. You know, because we have this, as you can see, when we use a heal, we suddenly have a, it goes on cooldown, so there's a period before we're able to use another heal. But not. Second, I was like, it's not leaving? No, it is. Yeah, so the end game, we sacrifice Fallen Embers. Then we run on in here. This is the other problem is, once again, I'm level 17, but the enemies that are spawning in this challenge are the equivalent of, like, tier 3 enemies. So, you know, I can do decent damage, but, like, dude, if I didn't have health on hit, these things would utterly annihilate me. Like, look how hard they are hitting. And most of the time, the only way I was getting decent damage here was spamming my unique ability. Which is that. I know if I'm not. There's another cape that I just know already that I will not be able to use that. There's also some weird stun hit follow-ups, like you saw there. Like certain attacks that will stun you as a player. And like right there, I was spamming dodge, but there was no getting out of that. Where I'm at now, the highest I've got down, I think, was like to the 4th level, but, you know, I'm level 17, and these enemies are dropping a loot that is the equivalent of level 21. That's tier 3, that I don't have the stat requirements to use anyway, and so then that also creates this loop where, you know, this unlocked even though I was a lower level, and so the only consistent way I can really get experience is like running out into the Orbing Glades or the Nameless Pass and just farming, just spending time fighting stuff over and over and over again until I get the levels we need. Some other things here in terms of the dailies. These are definitely a little bit goofy, you know, like find and kill the huntsman at Orbing Glades. That's fine, you know, I'm fine with daily quests, but the last stream I picked that up and I went through like all of that of Orbing Glades, and I never found the huntsman. So I definitely think for these, you know, find and kill person, just give me a yellow area in the map. Just give me a specific area to go to. You know, most of them are just, you know, he's somewhere in Mariner's Keep. Mariner's Keep is huge. Where do I gotta go? Some of the challenges are a little bit weird. You know, this one, complete a run. That's fine. Collect 10 mushrooms, but there was one where it wanted me to, like, what was it? I think this might be one where it's like collect 2 chipped Amethyst, but then it wants you to turn in the Amethyst. Like, no, you said to just collect these. You didn't say to turn those in. And also, upgrading our town has kind of like this mobile game timer type vibe. Like, you know, if I was to turn this in, it's going to be 4 hours before that's done. This one's going to take 1 hour. This is going to take 4 hours. And like, you know, with a game like this, like I'm turning that stuff in and then I'm done playing for the day. It'll be done when I come back tomorrow. But it's still a bit of a weird choice, time gating our upgrades. You know, that's, like I said, that's a mobile game feature. Like, oh, okay, this upgrade's gonna take some time. Come back and play tomorrow. Like, I don't like that bullshit. And when you couple that with just how absurd the resource economy is already, it just makes it, you know, even more annoying. But I mean, in terms of the core game, like the movement, being able to, you know, shoulder check stuff off ledges. The weapons are pretty cool. Like, we can extract stuff from weapons, like evasive combo. I could take that off this sword and put it on a different sword. We could take a weapon and, you know, put gems into it and put specific abilities on it. So there is a decent amount of build customization here, and there's a lot of systems that they're working on here that I think are good and that I do like. But more than anything, the overall game economy of, you know, monetary economy, loot economy, resource economy, I think all of that needs to be adjusted. So that's going to be it for now. As it stands now, I think I've done, you know, without leveling up more, just so that I could go deeper into the dungeon. There's not much else for me to do in this at the moment. It's definitely a game I'm going to keep my eye on, and I imagine I would have a lot of fun with this one at launch. But for now, at least, I think this one definitely needs some more time to cook. So I'm going to wrap things up here. Thanks for coming on by and listening to me ramble for 25 minutes, and I'll catch y'all next time.